So today's Bciu is actually notes from a conference I went to at the end of last year. It's actually late fall. The Online News Association, which is exactly what it says, the Online News Association. Hey, Jerry.
Yes.
You're on my bad list from last time as well, so make sure you watch it.
So sit on the ground over there.
Do we want the lights off? Set the mood in here.
Sure, go for it.
You got to sit down next to the shovel, Jerry.
I thought you were talking about me.
No, you were there.
All right,
I
so
got two to watch.
what I'm going to do a little bit is I'm going to go over just some of the things they touched on. It was 3.5 full days for me at conference after conference after conference, so I'm not digging too deep on really any of these. But a lot of this is the future, the future is now, the future of journalism online, what we can do, what we can't do, what's coming. So this is really an overview to help keep you guys a little bit in tune with what's coming up and what I learned at that conference. So the first really kind of interesting thing is they had the product manager for Facebook there. And she talked about a couple things with live video, which was still pretty new at the time. Overall, breaking news has been their most popular thing. For those of us in news, that's kind of a no-brainer. Weather is the most successful non-news related event. More visual, the better the success. I love these things because these are all things we all do well in journalism. Anything with just a talking head typically does pretty terrible. And the more that the host or videographer, whatever we want to call the person doing the live video, interacts with the audience, the better the video does. So, you can see comments in real time, you can see likes in real time. If you respond to those and these are Facebook stats overall. They've seen them do quite well. And we're going to pretend this is intentional here where I misspelled content. Because it's less about quality. It's more about the content. They talk specifically about how the audience is just so forgiving with live video, and we see that with 360 video as well. So that's just something to think about. Katie, in this room, Katie's done live video once. Remember that? Jerry, have you done it? Yeah. It's a little stressful, but that's the thing to keep in mind. I told Katie that about 800 times. Our audience is so forgiving because it is still kind of a new thing. And they understand that we're on a phone and not doing some produced thing. That was the problem I had at some of my other papers when we tried to do videos. They thought we should be like a TV station. So one thing that I did not know is that live video does not have to be done on a smartphone. That said, we have to go and use their commercial API, so there's some setup involved. But just so you guys know, that is something that we can pursue if we want to move forward. Let's say we do want to do newscasts or something. That was just surprising to me. And then the most interesting, she took questions from the audience, and the most interesting thing to me was she got asked if Facebook is a media company. Who thinks Facebook's a media company?
Well,
raise your hand if you think they are. Absolutely. I say absolutely myself. She said we're primarily a technology company. That was her answer, and everybody laughed, and not really. Some upcoming things that she mentioned that they have going on is some tweaks to Facebook Instant Articles. They're going to do some live video ads where you can cut away at 2 minutes in, and you'll have a mid-roll ad with your live video. So there's a way to monetize that. They'll set it up in the same format as Facebook Instant Articles. They were planning on having that at the end of January. I know they're much closer, but I think they're looking at the end of February for that. They're talking about doing the same thing with mid-roll pre-recorded ads. Does anybody know what that means?
Oh, in the middle of your video, you get a commercial.
Yep. So here's the deal. We don't upload our videos directly to Facebook because we can't monetize them that way, right? If we put them on our website, we get the pre-roll ads, we get the ads around it, we can monetize our videos. If Facebook creates something that will monetize videos that we directly upload to Facebook, that's a game changer. So the Herald, a little bit less so because we get good traffic on most of our videos, but for like Adventure Pro where we're struggling, and to ask people to click through to our website and then watch it is a really tedious experience, whereas if they can just click play on Facebook, they're more likely to watch it. The problem from our end is we just make no money off of it. So that's a game changer for our entire industry if and when that happens.
But we don't make money off of it if it's on Facebook with the ad on it?
There's no ads on it right now. We can't put an ad on Facebook per their rules. So let's say we have an ad for NASA, like Mia's shirt. We can't put an ad up on Facebook. We have to have just editorial content on Facebook.
What if Cuckoo's Chicken Wings wanted an ad?
then we'd have to host it on our website. We couldn't do it on Facebook.
You know, Cuckoo said, I'll buy an ad if you put it on Facebook.
You in with cuckoos or what?
Can't do it, but we're on it. They're all about video. They're pushing video. You've seen they've added a video tab. So Facebook. Couple little things that she added about Facebook that I thought was interesting. 50% of their videos are played without sound. YouTube, that's 60%. People talked a lot about the algorithm game. That's, how to make your post show up in front of more people. Her whole push with the journalists there was to build a business with them, which is interesting. And then she had the stat that 4 in 10 Americans get news online, 2 in 10 get news in print.
Rub it in.
It's not that big a difference.
It's not. It's like double.
4. No.
So, like I said, I'm jumping through a lot of stuff, and I'm just doing some of these. I'm just doing little previews over the sessions I went to. But one I went to was on empathy analytics. Michael, you have any idea what that is?
Measures how you audience think.
So,
Nice, Michael.
Well done.
a couple of things on that was, so one of the things that they looked at was monitoring analytics, not just in terms of page views or time spent on site, but on what articles or how many articles people need to look at before they converted to become a subscriber. So it was looking at your audience not just as viewers, but as those who view your shit for free and those who subscribe. And if there's any patterns in what they look at or how often they look at it or how often they're on the website or whatever calls to action they get before they actually subscribe. And a guy with Education Monthly, I think, they'd had something like a 60 or 70% increase in paid subscribers because they were able to start targeting what people looked at before they hit the subscribe button, which was really fancy. The other side of empathy analytics is getting your audience to strictly engage. And I talked to David about this the other day. One of the things that they've seen success in is instead of doing a quiz, what do you think about the legalization of pot, ask your audience what they know. And typically that's something like a news quiz, like, what did you learn, or do you know how many feet a marijuana shop has to be away from one another? And that really increases the interaction with your audience. Comment section, they did a bunch of tests, and they've tried to increase audience involvement in a positive manner. And one of the things they did was they had a couple different buttons, but the one they saw success with was they had, instead of a like button, they had a respect button. And so if we have David and Pat going head to head about climate change, that's where I was going, I almost said globalization, I meant climate change, then, they're each posting remarks, and Pat can say, I totally disagree with what David's saying, but I respect this comment, it's a quality comment. He may post something immediately that's the exact opposite of that, but he respects where that's coming from, instead of having a lower level engagement. And so then people that got more respect likes ended up at the top, and it really elevated the conversation on the news site that they were testing that on.
Certain comment sections I dislike, but if it's a good, like the Wall Street, I love the comment section of the Wall Street Journal. Even as nasty as they get, they're still nasty on the Wall Street Journal, but they're thoughtful and sometimes funny. I like.
Well, and if you have something like that creates an algorithm that does rise those ones that your audience kind of crowdsources as being better or more engaging, it's a no-brainer.
It's interesting, too, sometimes somebody will post or they'll share a post that's really a horrific thing. And then we had this, before it was like you can only like something. It's like, does that mean you like the fact that it was posted, or do you like the fact that it brought to life? Or do you like what's in that particular horrible thing?
And that's a lot of what this Shannon woman kind of got to, is that we've allowed Facebook to control our conversation.
Yeah.
We've allowed them to say we like something, or, we've enabled that in our vernacular. And why can't we have a respect button?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
This is something that we know, and particularly Sue and I with going through these reader engagement stuff, is there's a difference between readers what they say they look at, what they actually look at, and what subscribers look at. And this is what I was talking about with the guy from Education Monthly, is that he really noted a huge difference in what readers look at and what subscribers look at. He took their top 10 articles for the last year, 3 of them subscribers read the most. So they're really giving away a lot of content that's not being beneficial to their core audience.
Who was that?
He's the managing editor of Education Monthly. And he talked about he's a slightly different. They're based on educators. A lot of the universities will pay for people to have a subscription, so it's a little bit different than newspapers. But his data and his research was really interesting.
You say so the top stories were not read as much by subscribers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because subscribers wanted different news.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm shifting again here. I'm shifting a lot throughout this presentation. So I did go to the thing on podcasts, and let's go with Nick. How many people do you think Apple has working in their podcast division?
200.
Try to subtracting 198.
I was going to say two.
They have 2 people working in their podcast division. This podcast discussion was really interesting. They talked about, it's radio, but it's like a reconnaissance, and what you're doing is selling a habit. Later, I'm going to get in a little bit more about podcasts and whether they really are the future or not. But I thought that was really one of the most interesting.
The podcast is main audio.
It's audio typically in a way that's downloadable or listened to online. So a lot of radio shows, like one I love that I listen to as a podcast is Embedded. It's actually an NPR show, but I get it on my app and download it every week. And you can subscribe so it'll automatically download on your phone. So it's a little bit of a different delivery model than radio. So I went to it. I'm shifting again. Trying to get a little bit of information in here for everybody. I went to a thing that Gannett did on storytellers, and this is a Gannett program that was piloted in Phoenix, and they actually unveiled it at all of their properties across the nation. And what they did was monthly events around town, and what they did was they offered something that was different than what was happening elsewhere. So if they had a musician, it was a musician that you couldn't readily go hear at FLC or the Strader. If they had, they had a conversation between a black reporter and a white cop. And it was really just a conversation. So it was these different kind of story things, all based around different topics, all around town. 40 to 60% of the audience that they had at those did not read the newspaper. And so what they were looking at is an untraditional platform to kind of increase our foothold in the community. And as we diversify to different products, building up that brand identity is really, really, really key. And I wrote Brad again. I'm like typo queen here. Sorry.
So
Yeah, who's Brad?
Photographer I used to work with.
Is that a podcast, basically?
No, it would be like once a month they'd have a forum. Let's say we did it downstairs, where we're like, you know what, we're going to have a roundtable discussion with 5 photographers from town, and they're going to talk you through how to take great photos of the mountains. And then so it's partly presentation, partly interaction with the audience. So, I mean, the real deal with them is that they ended up having a 50% return rate from the audience and a 98% satisfaction rate from their audience. They did charge to get in, so there was a little bit of monetization there. But it was just a different way of looking at communicating with readers. And I thought it was really an interesting, or not readers, with the community. Because obviously we want readers, obviously we want money, but, we're all in this business because we want to tell stories. In person, you go in person.
These are events,
Mm-hmm.
live events.
Oh, yeah. Otherwise, video-wise, I could see that with the editorial section where they set up a monthly community editorial meeting.
Yeah, it was wildly popular, and it was really designed around, I say was, they're still doing it, my old paper's doing it, but designed around having something unique to offer your audience.
So how many people would actually come to these things,
Phoenix had like 300. The ones in Louisiana where I used to work, they've been doing musicians because they're Cajun Creole music scene, and they have about 300. They do it in their community room. So they really use it for branding, like I said, and the thing that they really promoted is that newsroom folks can tell their story much better than anybody in marketing can. And I think that's something that those of us in this room really know, because the marketing people don't understand our story. It's a really unique thing that we do. And then they also talked about, intimacy is key, having it like not in some huge auditorium with bright lights. It should feel like something with friends. So I thought that was pretty interesting. Mia, what's a bot?
Online.
Mm-hmm.
It's not. It could be a couple different things. It's not a real person. It's usually spam. A lot of the time, it'll send you links to things, or how do I explain it better than that?
That's so close. Go for it. Close.
Yeah. It's stuff that gets implanted on in your browser or whatever that collects information and distributes it without your knowledge, right?
So you guys are like super into the bad bots, but yeah, you're right. Here are also good bots. So it really does stand for robot, and what they're individualized programs that give you some sort of context. So in the spam thing, yeah, they're individualized programs that focus on you and send you spam. In the real world, so have you guys ever gone on like Verizon or some page and you get the little pop-up window in the right-hand corner that says, "Hi, I'm Claudia. Can I help you today?" And then you're like, "Why, yes, your crappy phone doesn't work." So when you're talking right there, you're talking to a bot. You're not talking to a real person. And then what it'll do is if it's like, "Oh, I see that."
For a date.
I see, they look for keywords
That's
like.
why she never showed up.
It wasn't real.
So let's say I said your crappy phone doesn't work. So I've said the words phone, I've said crappy, which you can program as a high kind of risk word, and they realize they need to elevate me to somebody that's a real chat. If I say my 0 button doesn't work, I might get an automatic response that says, "Please try rebooting your computer or your phone." So it's something that has a lot of automated responses, but then at some point will elevate you to a person if need be. A search engine is a kind of bot. So like on our website where you search, you search Patrick Armijo, his stories pop up, including the recent centerpiece. Nice job with Shane. And so that's a bot. It's a less interactive bot, but it's getting you individualized results. That said, it's actually pretty easy to make your own bots now. It's basically a spreadsheet, which is kind of crazy to me. The easiest way to do is with anything that has definitive information. So the Today Show has a recipe bot because a recipe is the most definitive thing you can have. You need X, you need X, you need X, you mix here, you bake here, it's very, very specific. Having a bot about a fluoride discussion could be a little bit harder because there's so many kind of personal views in there. That was probably a bad
Right, weren't you talking about how journalism has the potential to start using bots in story writing?
In story writing, and one thing that they've talked about, particularly with hopefully the next election, is to have bots that fact check in real time.
Little Trump bot.
But literally, where I ask Nick a question, Nick will respond. By the time Nick's done responding, I, as a journalist, can say, "Oh, what you said about this is completely false. What about and that's across the board politically. You've all seen every one of those debates. I think maybe Hillary had the most truth-telling in debates at something like 78%. So, if the best person's lying 25% of the time, that's a bummer. Having a real-life bot checker would be great.
As long as that bot's not checking fake journalism, fake news.
So that is one thing that, and I think I get into this a little bit later, but bots are programmed by people. So Alexa, which is the Google bot, which Doug has on his desk, doesn't recognize female voices as easily as males. So female voices,
Which one?
Alexa. So they're programmed by humans.
Nothing's changed.
Yeah. Yeah, we're used to that.
So don't worry about it, Tony.
All right. Transition a little bit more because we're kind of flying along. Jerry, what's VR?
Virtual reality.
Right. So there's virtual reality and there's 360-degree storytelling, and they are two different things. Virtual reality is, do I go into it a little bit? So there's a great virtual reality storytelling example of a homeless man who was outside of a shelter in San Francisco, I believe it was. He collapsed and died and nobody helped him. They actually had audio of the event for some reason. And so what they do is you put on the Google Glass or the Google Cardboard, and they're kind of cartoony people that stand in for all the other people, and you participate, you hear the audio, and you watch this man basically collapse and die. And that's it's hard to find these virtual reality things that would be good for journalism. That's one. Things where putting people in their place, are really good. The Guardian has done a fantastic one, and I have some links I can send out afterward that put you in solitary confinement. It's unbelievable. So 360-degree storytelling is a little bit different. It's typically done with cameras. It only is done with cameras. They have these 360-degree cameras now. We actually have one back in the video department that Jerry's going to steal and use at some point. They do both still and video. And 360-degree storytelling is hard too. Katie, what's a good example of when you might want to use a 360-degree storytelling for storytelling?
So 360-degree storytelling would be everybody's, like,
It's visually, you can see 360 degrees.
like
Sorry.
a show, maybe? Like a, I don't know,
Like a concert, you mean?
well, no, not really, huh, because you don't really care about the audience too much.
You might care about the audience. I mean, if it's a dead show, right?
Oh, black.
Yeah.
Look at that crime scene,
Yeah,
and really
crime
show
scene.
what's going on.
Does the exposure change when you come around on those?
Get the layout
So it's
down.
2 cameras typically back to back. It depends on what kind of camera you have.
Yeah.
The one that we have is 2 cameras back to back. That's one that Jack and I have at home too. There are some that are 16 cameras mounted, so they each have their own individual exposure.
So was it just on a stick?
Like the ones on the roof.
Ours looks like an alien. It's like a ball in here. The one that Jack and I have at home is like a little cube.
Actually, this meeting would be a great 360 because then everybody could just like, who's watching this remotely, see what Nick's doing.
So
What are you doing? man?
So currently
Get
on
out.
these, the only places you can publish them are YouTube, Facebook, and Bciu, virtual reality video it stands for. And so if you look at Adventure Pro's Facebook page, we've put up 2 360 photos. One of which was great. It was in the Box Canyon up in Uray with people climbing on all sides. It was a perfect example of using that. Cameras start at $400 and go up from there. So the one Jack and I got one for $600. Which I love right now.
You should do the parade then tomorrow with Tara.
So the problem with 360 video is because it's such huge files, editing and rendering them for publication take days.
Yeah.
So we're not, that's why we've been doing stills with them.
You put it on a drone.
You can, but then you can see the drone. But audiences are very forgiving with this kind of footage right now because they think it's cool. Some people are also using what's called spatialized audio, which in the past I think we've considered bad audio. But it's where as you move around the room, so if you were moving around and you went to Mark, and I'm the one talking, my voice would get a little softer. And so if there were different things going on in the different parts of the room, you'd hear that audio as you scrolled over it more. And the treatment of graphics are entirely different. I have this Michelle Obama one you should go watch because it's fascinating how they use them. I'll send out some of these, but there's, I don't know how to say this, journalism. It's a program for students at USC. The Guardian Solitary Confinement one is amazing, and then there's one that's an interview with Michelle Obama from January 2016 that is about the best use of graphics I've seen in 360 video. So I'll send those out to you guys because they're really cool to look at. This journalism one, the best one that they did, and they're kids, so they're learning, but they did roller derby, which is literally a circle. So I'm going to start trying to talk a little faster. So Amy Webb, who is actually speaking at the Colorado Press Association event this year, is amazing. She is a futurist, and she's the founder of the Future Today Institute. She went over 10 trends for journalism. I'm just going to hit on some of them, but they're amazing. Is this a hyperlink? This is my last slide, so that's good. Ugh. Come on, baby. All right. So I am just going to kind of clip through here on some of her stuff, and I will be faster. Oh, come on. Please work with me. All right. So she's a futurist. Great. I think that's the best job title you can ever have.
One of the trends should be to make technology work,
Yeah.
to make it, function.
So this is an interesting thing. I'm going to take you through kind of an abbreviated version of what she did here. So she had this guy that came to her, and he's a media exec, and he said, oh, hey, I want to be the Uber for news. And she's like, huh? He's like, 3 years from now, I want to have on-demand news platforms. Kids tap their buttons, and they get, news that they want delivered to them. And she's like, so an app? And he's like, well, you get news right away. That's what I want. And she's like, it's an app. And he's like, yeah, but more like Uber. And she's like, dude, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
And so she's a little dramatic here. So one is that she thought that Uber was the trend, or this executive thought Uber was the trend. But if you look at a trend, I'm going to flip through these and use what she talked about Uber, is that what Uber does is Uber takes, basically we don't have to drive, right? Somebody else will drive us, which frees us up to do some other things. Well, then you take Uber happening along with, or Lyft now that Uber is on the blacklist, I guess, but along with the fact that self-driving cars are becoming more popular, right? And so what you're going to have is you're going to have the divergence of these two things. They're not trends, they're just two things that are happening. And so what's going to happen is that the two of these are going to combine, and you're basically going to have Uber or taxi cabs that can drive without drivers, right? So we can all have our own, basically driverless cars that'll come pick us up whenever we want, right? So the media source used in cars is radio. Well, if we're not driving these cars, if we can be, working out or reading or working while we're driving into work, then what basically happens and what the trend is that Uber's killed radio. And so that's what she does, is she looks at all of these independent things that are happening and figures out what the trend is. So the trend is not Uber, the trend is not driverless cars. The trend is that radio news is going to die.
What about, doesn't that also kill seeing the real world around you as you're passing through it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Reality? Yeah.
Kind of gets killed in a way.
So, I mean, there's...
It's overrated.
So that's what this is kind of. So anyway. So I just talked a little bit about how she finds that. So one thing that's really happening, it's about the biggest thing, is object recognition. So you look at this and what do you see?
A red flower.
Text.
Right, we don't really know what it is. Well, now you look at this and what are we seeing? We're seeing some water bottles that look like they're foreign. They're not probably from America. You see a person is African or black. It looks like they're probably holding this on top of their head, right? We infer all of this stuff as humans on this picture. And then you keep going and you zoom out a little bit more, maybe. And you see, yeah, you get some more context clues and you can tell the environment. So we recognize as humans what's in the picture. Got shrubs, bottles, different methods of carrying, probably not in America. And then you can, now we can geolocate where anything is. So basically what computers are starting to do and what we've trained them to do is to be able to look at all of these different photos, do all this object recognition, and to really basically map our world. And at this point we have 7 billion people, and she estimates in 3 years nearly every single one of those 7 billion people will have a camera in their pocket. And so object recognition becomes really, really key. Sorting pictures, using them as data becomes really, really key. And so what we've done is we've created these machines to recognize objects. So this is one example they did where they had a computer look at this and try to decide what they saw. And this is what the computer saw: an admiral dog, a pig snail, a camel bird, and a dogfish. So what it means is that they've trained the computer to be able to kind of combine what it's seeing visually and make these kind of guesses. Here's another one. They looked at the horizon and saw a pagoda, a tree, looks kind of like a building. These leaves look kind of like a bird. So we're training bots, whatnot, to look at objects. So here's one. They Googled Josh Hatch teeth. Josh Hatch is the head of ONA right now. So they pulled this picture up. The interesting thing is that this metadata on this picture, which are the words attached to it, the only words attached to it say Josh Hatch. How did it know it was a picture of Josh Hatch's teeth versus like this picture? Because it can recognize the object that it shows the teeth. It's a little creepy, I'm not going to lie. And so we're training machines to recognize objects, and not just that, we're training them to infer meaning. So this is a website based in Russia, I believe. And what it does is instead of Googling somebody or looking somebody up on Facebook, it scrolls the internet for photos. So if I upload a picture of Katie, it can scroll the internet for photos of her, whether it has her name attached to it or not. And then you can learn even more about people than what they really want you to know. And so here's one where they uploaded this picture and they found this picture of this girl. And from that, they found all of this information about her.
It's like facial recognition, kind of facial recognition
Basically.
technology.
And the other thing is they can notice us even when we're moving. If you're not familiar with this face shift program, we actually have this and are kind of playing with it. And what it does is it takes, and you can mark where your eyes are, and then you find an inanimate object, and you can animate it. And so, and even like this, like the algorithms right now, if you upload this picture to Facebook, but let's say it's Michael and Buck hanging out with their hair in their face,
Guys.
Facebook will still say, hey, is this David Buck? You want to tag him? Because these objects recognize, or the machines recognize us even when we're moving, even when we're covered up. It's kind of creepy, but and they're learning to recognize our actions and how we behave too. And so this is a test they did with
This is good?
it's what's happening is what I'm saying. It's not that it's good. So what they did with the computers, they took a still frame and they had the computer predict what would happen. So here they did this, and the computer said it was going to be a handshake, and it was. This one they showed, and the computer said it was going to be a kiss, and it was. This one, they looked at and predicted it was going to be a handshake. It was actually a high five, because, or maybe it was a fist bump. It's Michael Scott. And then also with sounds. So they did some testing with people versus machines, with real sounds versus synthesized sounds. And the machine got it right every time. People did not.
Huh.
So I'm going to keep going here. So this one is fascinating to me, and I'm going to speed through this, but this is one of the first ones. If you guys remember this is a soccer game. One of the kids was crying. The kid from the winning team went over and comforted the kid from the crying team. This was done with a program that automatically edits videos, and what she basically thinks is the future here is that it's Watch It. We're actually looking at it here locally. What she says is the future is very, very soon. We're going to be producing about 50 videos a day because the editing process is going to be taken out because the object recognition will be able to edit these videos for us. She thinks within 5 years we're going to be producing thousands of videos a day because what it's going to do is that these objects are going to be able to recognize what kind of video would appeal to Pat and do a separate edit for him versus a separate edit for David Buck from the same event.
Climate change, different points of view.
Yes.
Yeah.
Completely
And here you go. Basically, video is the future, and it's a whole different video thing than what we know.
So it'll editorialize, essentially.
Basically. So we're a little late, so I'm going to run through just a few of these because I think you guys should see. So this right here is a tweezer, to give you a little bit of idea of size here. This is a camera. This is 20 of those cameras put together. She talked a lot about, and that was the copyright I just passed, smart desks, which are computers that are light enough to suspend in air, where you have 1,000 of them on your hand and you blow them. They take 360 pictures of everything as they hit the ground. Before it hits the ground, it's relayed back to the office, and we have coverage of that event.
Is this developed, a NASA development?
It was Stuttgart, actually.
Okay.
So.
goddamn Ruskies.
So, and this was one that just really caught me. It's what if our camera stopped reporting the truth? It very much reminds me of 1984 kind of stuff. Couple things I talked about, machine bias. So there was a real problem with Google algorithm where it would show black people if you Googled gorillas. So again, just remember that humans are not the awesomest people in the world. This was something else that was put out by marketers. Oh my God, I can't even, sorry. Oh my God, am I only on number 2, y'all? Jesus. So the second thing she talked about was crowd learning, which is where we learn as groups instead of crowdsourcing, which we all know what that is. And I think we've really seen that with the Trump campaign and the fake news is that we've given up on crowd education. And we've kind of hit this crowd learning approach. If you guys want, in fact, I'll go ahead and just send this out afterward because I don't want to keep you guys forever. And you can kind of flip through what you find super interesting. But those are some of the things that I learned. Those are some of the trends that are coming up. It's really fascinating where we could go, where we are going, and the speed at which we're changing is ridiculously fast.
It's horrible.
So, some of it's good. This is how she used crowd learning to figure out that there was a cancer cluster where she grew up. And how, it can help us find some really good stories. We need to know what we're doing, and we need to know who makes the data and where the data comes from. One thing she did bring up that I thought was really interesting, that she thinks that we're on the verge of a data catastrophe because we don't have enough storage for all the data that we need. And the virtual reality video is totally
Why
that.
would that be a catastrophe? That's a high-class problem to have.
It is. Augmented reality, by the way, and I'll just mention this quickly, or mixed reality, is a combination of that virtual and that real. So that thing I was telling you about with the San Francisco guy dying is a combination. I'll send you guys this stuff out. The 360 stuff is super cool, and the fact that we, Doug was able to get us one of those cameras is rad, and so hopefully we'll be playing with that. But her whole, like I said, she's talking to the Colorado Press Association meeting this year. Oh, this is that San Francisco virtual reality thing. And she's She is really phenomenal. If you have time, I would highly suggest going to talk to her. This is the first virtual reality movie ever made called Hardcore Henry, where you play Henry and you actually shoot people up.
Has to be guns always, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
And she talked a little bit about how, what if you commit a crime in virtual reality, can you be found liable? And her assumption was under current laws, no.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm in virtual reality and I kill Katie, whether or not I can be charged is interesting.
Could you be
I
virtually
was
charged?
wondering if there was any discussion about virtual court ethics and understanding of, of context.
There was a lot of discussion about our role as journalists and our responsibility. Not ethics so much, but the entire conference was about transparency. So in 360 photos, a lot of people Photoshop themselves out. Because if you're taking a photo, I'm in it. You can set it up and run outside and take it. The New York Times did one in Syria where they had interviewed a woman who had been raped repeatedly, and they had been doing this whole 360 project in Syria, and so they wanted to include this as part of it. And so what they did is they shot stills. Let's say it's the two of you. They shot a stills of the interview because it's so awkward to be like, "Hey, I'm at the camera here and interview from outside." And so they shot, or not stills. They shot two-dimensional video of the interview, and then they took a 360 picture and dropped the video in. So you could still do 360 at any time. It was always the same because it was one still image. And the ethics of that, as a still photographer, that is wonky. But on the other hand, they were very transparent about what they did. They talked about it. And so we really talked a lot about just being transparent with your audience, making sure that they know what you're doing, how you're doing it. And, but yeah, ethics is a huge concern, and it should be, and that's why bots won't replace us.
And there's, well, it's not just us, I'm just a general populace, because the gullibility factor, of course, as we've seen recently, is huge.
Mm-hmm.
And the more sophisticated the technology becomes, like you said, we are changing faster, but we are not. The technology is changing, we're just trying to keep up, right? Exactly.
One real quick thing I did want to show you guys, and we'll end on this if I can find it, is... Oh, did you guys see this Tay Tweets? This was a robot that started tweeting from Google, and within about 15 minutes, he had been turned into a pure racist. Where?
Wait, I didn't understand. So it was learning from
It was
things online?
learning from its interaction.
People were being nasty. So it picked it up.
Well, I can see how facial recognition would be so easy to do across the internet when people have their face directly in front of their screen continuously at all angles.
Oh, I can't find it.
So it would be really easy for that data to be collected and then utilized for search. Because you're always looking at your screen.
Oh, I can't find it.
Huh.
So there is, and I cannot find it right now, but do you guys know who the #1 pop star in the world is?
Bruno Mars.
David Hasselhoff.
If that was not the weirdest guess.
That Japanese AI thing?
There is an AI performer. She's female. She's a hologram.
Yeah.
And she is she will have 70,000 people, 100,000 people at a concert to see her.
Live people, like real people, watching a hologram of her on stage.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
And she's not a real person in the world.
No, I wish I could find a picture of her, but it's on here somewhere. But that's the world we're in.
So if she does an
Well,
appearance with
she
Jimmy Fallon,
may not be a
it'll
real
like
person, but real persons
AI.
can develop her in some way, right? 'Cause
Every AI thing is built by humans, yes. So
wait a minute.